All right, well, we are back to, welcome back to the public meeting of the Revenue Division Appeals Board. It is 11:38 a.m. on April 18th, 2024. All members of the board are still present, and our guests from our first public session are back in the room as well. I do have a couple of comments to make, and then I'll ask if there's any other business to bring before the board before I adjourn. The final comments that I'd like to make for the board members are related to our duties under the public meeting law. As we've discussed and as you've heard, according to advice that we received from the city attorney, the board should be subject to the public meeting law requirements in ORS 192, 660, and so forth. Generally that means we have to give notice of public meetings, that all votes are conducted in public, and that executive sessions are restricted to only discussing particular confidential information. So for board members' information, the public meeting laws are now enforced and administered by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, OGEC. OGEC offers training for board members. There's also something called the Attorney General's Guide, Public Meeting Guide. It's like the Public Records and Public Meeting Guide that is also publicly available through OGEC and on the Attorney General's website, which is a great resource for board members. I would highly encourage everyone to review it to understand the provisions of Oregon law related to executive sessions, and the confidentiality provisions of those as well. One thing I'll throw out that we have been, so I have been in discussion with the Revenue Division on behalf of the board about this, just about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Don Jones, who's the policy analyst for the Revenue Division, and I jointly requested from OGEC, the Government Ethics Commission, a commission advisory opinion on a particular question, which is there is a bit of a conflict between Oregon public meeting law, ORS 192-660, which says that we can conduct executive sessions and exclude unauthorized individuals from those sessions to review information otherwise not subject to public disclosure. Separately, ORS 314-835, which is part of the tax code that specifically protects the disclosure of tax return related information, also applies to those meetings, because we're all bound as we've signed confidentiality agreements, but also under ORS 314-835 and the city code, we're also bound to keep taxpayer information confidential, and specifically not to disclose it to anyone who's unauthorized. Oregon public meeting law allows the news media to attend executive sessions if they request. And the whole point there is to make sure that the public meeting law is enforced, right? If no one can come to executive session and see what's being discussed, then how do we, enforce the law? How do we make sure that boards are meeting the law? So it makes sense. There's a conflict though, because if news media were present in an executive session under ORS 314-835, we would each be violating the law if we discussed a case, and so would the Revenue Division employees be violating the law if they discussed a case in the presence of someone who was unauthorized, i.e. a member of the media. So we have asked jointly, the board or me on behalf of the board and the division have asked OGEC to weigh in on how to resolve that conflict. Should we be allowed to exclude news media from executive sessions where we're conducting them under 314-835, or is there some other way that we can comply, with both laws? Because we certainly want to comply with the public meeting law, but we also want to comply with the tax law. And most recently, ORS 314-835 in this last executive session just a couple of months ago was amended specifically to make sure it applied to local government proceedings. And so, or local government disclosure of taxpayer information. And that was all kind of related to a dispute that's actually been pretty public between the Revenue Division and the news media, OPB specifically, related to disclosure of information, taxpayer information around certain tax programs that are administered by the city. So I'm trying to make sure we're protected as board members, that we're not violating the public meeting law, but at the same time, we're not violating the ORS 314 either in our requirements to keep taxpayer information confidential. So as soon as we get the official advisory opinion back from OGEC, I'll make sure and share that with the whole board so that we're all aware of their guidance in terms of what we should be doing. Just so you understand, OGEC issues several different levels of guidance. Commission advisory opinions are issued by the commission itself, and they're voted on by the commission itself, which hold precedential power. Or like they basically are official opinions that the commission has taken up stance. Anything below that, they have staff advisory opinions and informal opinions that they issue. Those they don't have to follow, but the commission advisory opinions are binding on the commission. So they couldn't later hold the board or board members accountable for a violation of the public meeting law if they've told us in advance that their advice is that their official advice is that it's okay to conduct business in a particular way. So we're hoping to hear back from them. They say it takes 60 days for opinions, so we may or may not hear before our next hearing. It's only an issue if someone who's unauthorized, a member of the news media who might be authorized under public meeting law but not under ORS 314, wants to appear and be part of the executive session. So I think it's unlikely that that happens at the meeting in May, but one thing to be aware of is if it does happen and there is an unauthorized person in the room, I'll have to suspend an executive session meeting or adjourn the meeting because we can't hear taxpayer appeals. At least under our current understanding of both laws, we can't hear taxpayer appeals if there's anyone unauthorized in the room at the time. So I would encourage you to look at those training resources and familiarize yourself with the public meeting law. If you have questions about that outside of here, feel free to reach out to me. One other point is a quorum of this board. So 3 members of the board makes a quorum. Cannot meet outside of a public meeting or a duly noticed executive session to discuss anything related to the board. So that doesn't mean that we can't individually, one-on-one discuss something if needed, but we can't ever meet with a quorum or that is a public meeting essentially if we're conducting board business or board business is at issue at all. So that doesn't prohibit, if we see each other at a conference or something, that's not like we can't say hi to each other, but we certainly can't discuss board business with any more than with a quorum or more outside of a public meeting. Any other business before the board for today's meeting? All right, hearing none then, I'll make an announcement. Our next meeting is May 15th, 2024. It'll be at 8:30 a.m., starting at 8:30 a.m. It's expected to run till about 4:30 probably. Our last case is scheduled to be heard at 3:30, so I would guess that our executive session will probably run till about 4:30, and we may have a brief public session. We'll have a very brief public session at least, but we may have a little bit longer public session at the end to discuss any motions that come up during executive session. That meeting will be held in person at the OSCPA Center, lower level learning center, like it's a big training room. So we'll be there. I will also, for board members who are going to be there in person, I'll send a meeting invite out for it for everybody with the Zoom information. We'll send the public meeting notice out through the Revenue Division in the next few days. And then anyone who's going to be there in person, please let me know if you're going to be there in person. I'm going to arrange to order lunch for everyone who's going to be there in person for the board members and Revenue Division staff. Stephen should be there to support us. And then if any board members or certainly any taxpayers or representatives wish to appear by Zoom, you're more than welcome to do that. To the extent you can, for board members, I would highly encourage you to be there in person. I think it'll be helpful for us to collaborate if we're all there together. But certainly, if you need to appearing by Zoom is perfectly fine. And we'll have it all set up in the training room there so that anyone appearing by Zoom will be able to see the full board as well as others who are presenting on individual cases. All right, hearing nothing else, I will officially adjourn this meeting of the Revenue Division Appeals Board at 11:48 a.m. Thank you all for your time today. I appreciate it, and hope you all have a great day. We'll see you in a month.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Adam.
All right,
Thank
thanks so
you.
much.